Hello again, this is Great Work, a podcast and email helping people who do work we care about have better working lives and foster better teams. With me, Adam Sandel. Doctors don't often talk about our mistakes while quietly nursing shame and fear of consequences. This is a problem. And so I'm going to tell you about one of my medical errors. There are lessons here for anyone who does work that matters and who worries about getting things wrong, or who finds it hard to cope when they do. My patient was someone who was getting 3 monthly hormonal injections for contraception. These have been around forever, and fewer people use them now. There are often better birth control options. But they're right for some. One easy injection a few times a year, and nothing else to remember. The first time I met her, I checked when her last injection had been. We had a few weeks to run, so as well as trying to help her with some other things, I booked an appointment for her next injection. UK medical listeners may be puzzled here. In Canada, it's mostly doctors, not nurses, who do this stuff. When she showed up for that next appointment, I did the date calculation again and realized I'd made a mistake the first time. When I'd first met her, she had been due her injection, and we were now several weeks late, well outside the window during which the injection can be relied upon for contraception. And that was entirely my fault. I told her what had happened and apologized profusely. We did a pregnancy test, which was negative, but that didn't rule out an early pregnancy. And we figured out her contraception going forward. And then I waited, anxiously. The least bad outcome of this would be that she may worry until we had another negative pregnancy test in a couple of weeks. But there were a lot of worse possible futures, all beginning with an unwanted pregnancy when she'd put her trust in me to prevent that. And an unwanted pregnancy's big. This was a really stupid mistake. I spend much of my time as a doctor making complex judgment calls about how best to balance people's heart failure, kidney disease, blood pressure, and frustration with how many medications they're taking, or working to build trust with traumatized people. Those are hard things to do. This was easy, and it's pretentious to call it a medical error. It was a subtraction mistake. She didn't show up for another pregnancy test when I'd hoped she would, and wasn't answering her phone. And I already wasn't at my best, and started carrying a dark cloud of worry around with me for weeks. What if she's pregnant? What if that's awful for her? What if there's some terrible complication? What if my mistake has professional consequences for me? I told my partner, she's a nurse practitioner, what was on my mind, making sure it was anonymous. I suppose it's not the worst medical error it's possible to make, I said, trying dolefully to make myself feel better. I don't know, she replied. What if she gives birth to Hitler? But the dark humour came with kindness, and that helped. And it was okay. No pregnancy. My patient showed up again sometime later to see me when she could have chosen a colleague. Her life moved on. Mine did too. But it could easily have been life-changing for her. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did ask her how she'd feel about me putting this piece together. And yes, she generously gave me her permission to do so. And I've altered some details. Earlier in my career, I would have handled this worse, and this is not the worst medical error I've made in all the years I've been a doctor. For that, you'll need to hold out for the book I'm writing. But there are lessons here, and having taken my mistakes really badly in the past, I'm going to acknowledge that I have learnt from those experiences, and I handle this one a bit better as a result. First, apologize. Apologize clearly, sincerely, and without hedging. When things do go wrong, a genuine apology really helps people deal with it. And it makes you feel a bit better too. Sometimes people's first reaction is anger. That's understandable. With time, it usually dissipates. I've almost always been able to rebuild relationships after that, and the prompt apology helps with that. Lawyers will tell you that often an early apology prevents litigation. Recognizing this, many parts of the world have legislated to encourage apologies by saying that they won't be treated as admissions of legal liability. Get advice about that. Second, do what you can to fix it. This is almost too obvious to mention, but not quite. Do everything you can do to put it right. That's your responsibility now. And doing it quickly and effectively, this is a time to go out of your way for people, often reduces any harm caused, as well as the likelihood of adverse consequences for you. Third, document it. Remember, I used to be a human rights lawyer? I spent a lot of time in court cross-examining police officers, prison officers, doctors, and others who'd screwed things up for people with sometimes horrifying consequences. Few things look worse than trying to hide it. Like apologies, a full, neutral record of what happened helps. Fourth, get advice if you need it. This was one where it would have been reasonable to have called the organisation that would support me in the event of a malpractice claim. Let's not beat around the bush. I was negligent. On this occasion, I didn't because at that early stage, I knew what to do, and because there was no way I wasn't responsible for this. If there had been more nuance to it, if I'd been earlier in my career, or if I wasn't a former lawyer, I would have done. If in doubt, speak to whomever you speak to in these situations, which for you might be a boss, supervisor, department head, or school principal. Fifth, worry about it. You're going to, and it's not pleasant. There was a point at which I was trying to soothe myself by digging into research into the risks of pregnancy, given the exact amount of time my patient's injection had been overdue, hoping it would reassure me when, of course, that research hasn't been done. But I want to make the controversial suggestion that so long as your worrying doesn't become pathological, it may be good and perhaps even something to welcome. Because this is how you learn and get better. There are all sorts of lessons. What predisposed to this? How could this have been avoided? What could I have done differently? Are there skills or knowledge I need to work on? Is there a new habit I could build that would reduce the risk of this happening again? Could I have responded better when I realized this had happened? How can I best look after myself in this situation? It's important not to let yourself off the hook just because, as in this case, chance was kind to you. The fact that nothing awful happened or that no one complained doesn't mean you shouldn't look for opportunities to learn or forget about it. What did I learn here? Well, several things predisposed to it. I was in a new job, which adds a bit of stress, and it was a busy day, and I was running late, and more generally, I wasn't functioning well at the time this happened. I think those were all factors in my usual, reliable sanity check. Do those 2 dates look like they're X weeks apart? Misfiring. I got a few other more trivial things wrong around that time and subsequently discovered, to my surprise, that I'd been very iron deficient and had been experiencing the cognitive effects of that. I'm amazed by how much better I'm now performing, having got some iron back into my bone marrow. And it's helping me understand how iron deficiency affects my patients. What else did I learn? I was reminded of how much easier this goes when you immediately, candidly apologize, take responsibility, and do what you can to put it right. And although this wasn't all about me, I was reminded how rare it is for these things to have serious consequences for normally conscientious people who make an honest mistake. Sixth, look after yourself. Many things become easier the longer you spend doing the tough work that you and I do. One of those is coping when you've made a mistake. They should worry you, your mistakes. If they don't, something's wrong. We absolutely should do everything we can to do the best job we can. And when something goes wrong, it's vital to act promptly and responsibly. But we're human. Over the years, I've made plenty of mistakes, some trivial, a few serious. Everyone with whom I've worked for long enough to know has made occasional mistakes too. If you've not made any, you're either unhealthily resistant to self-criticism, or you haven't been doing the job for long enough. This stuff happens even to the best of people, and I'm not the best of people. Thankfully, most mistakes have no serious consequences, but sometimes really bad things happen and you'll be responsible. You'll be racked with guilt. You might be sued or have to respond to a formal complaint. Even in these horrible situations, it's important, not just for you, but for those your work serves, that you're able both to learn from it and to come to terms with it and to keep on doing your important work. So look after yourself. Talk to kind, fair people about it. If you're beating yourself up about it, that's telling you that you're taking it seriously. You can't do tough work without making mistakes. Do the things above, apologize, fix it if you can, get advice if you need to, document it, learn from it. Next, well, you're not going to forget about this. Rather, file it in your mental things I've learnt from box for future reference, and then move on. My things I've learnt from box is huge, and the hinge on the lid is broken now from my going in there several times a day to rummage around. We don't talk much about our mistakes. If we did, if we normalized this, we'd find our screw-ups easier to manage, and we'd learn more from them and from other people's. And we'd all do a better job. We'd have less of a blame culture and more of a learning culture. This is why we should push back, as I'm trying to do here, against that culture of not talking candidly about when we get things wrong. Everyone does. Beating yourself up about your mistakes is the hallmark of conscientiousness. Do it, but then move on. Want to meet me at a conference? The next one at which I'm speaking is the University of Michigan Eisenberg Family Depression Center's virtual half-day conference on workplace mental health. It's on the 5th of August. A really interesting lineup of speakers focused on how organizations can better support employee well-being and success. I'm talking about emotional regulation at work. What can employers actually do? And then after that, it's Research Ed St. Louis on the 26th of September. Research Ed is a wonderful international conference for teachers who want to use good evidence to provide better teaching. I'll be speaking in St. Louis about how teachers can have better working lives, because there's good evidence that wrung-out teachers leave and that teacher turnover harms learning. Links to both of those are in the episode notes and in the email version of this episode. That's it for this time. Thanks to Bren Russell for his skillful editing, and a big thanks to you for being part of this great work project. If you're listening on a podcast app or YouTube, you can also sign up for the emails at www.adamsandel.com. That's adamsandell.com. That way, the podcasts land straight in your inbox with a version you can read if you prefer. And that's the link to share if you know anyone else who might be interested. If you have found something useful here, please do share it. You have no idea how much it helps. Thank you so much for listening.